While the government has set out to spend up to 2.7 trillion shillings to finance its programs for the next 1 year, more than 900 billion shillings will be spent to service a rising public debt whose sustainability now appears uncertain given falling revenue. Soon, the government might be unable to finance any development projects, with recurrent expenditure also not assured given the COVID-19 pandemic. And as Sam Gituku reports, the public debt that is expected to rise to nearly 7 trillion shillings in the next 1 year could be a cause for worry for a highly indebted economy with strained revenue streams.
According to statistics from the Central Bank of Kenya, by February 2020, the public debt had reached 6.15 trillion shillings, way before the coronavirus pandemic hit the country, forcing the government to procure two loans totaling 178 billion shillings from the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. This number having risen from 5.4 trillion shillings 12 months earlier, split between domestic and foreign debt in almost equal proportion. As per the February 2020 figures, the government owes local lenders up to 3.04 trillion shillings and 3.1 trillion shillings to foreign lenders. And with local revenues expected to shrink due to the coronavirus pandemic, the government's appetite for borrowing might just go up. Already, the government hopes to close the budget deficit in funding by borrowing 473.6 billion shillings from the external market and 349.7 billion shillings locally, totaling to 823 billion shillings. In the government expenditure plan, at least 1.04 trillion shillings are mandatory charges under the Consolidated Fund Services. These include 904 billion shillings for servicing existing debts. 51% of that is in form of interest, the remainder being principal repayments that are due. Pensions will take 119 billion shillings, while salaries and allowances for constitutional offices will take just over 4 billion shillings.
Going forward, Mr. Speaker,
in the current financial year 2019-2020, over 1.5 trillion shillings had been estimated to be collected from local revenues. But due to the COVID-19 pandemic, that was revised to 1.3 trillion shillings. Given that the pandemic has only affected the last quarter of the current financial year, the revenue projections for the new financial year may be grim. More borrowing may become necessary, or else essential expenditure may begin to struggle.
I, Uhuru Kenyatta.
During President Kenyatta's reign, the public debt has risen by more than 340%. He started off at 1.79 trillion shillings in June 2013, registering a consistent annual rise to stand at 6.2 trillion shillings currently. Yatani's task being to ensure the debt levels are sustainable, but his choices may be thinning.
I'm not sure if there's any country that has developed without borrowing. If you look at the indicators all over the world, a case example of country like Japan has borrowed up to 278% of their GDP, while in the US is 103%. A country like Angola is 111%, while our borrowing is about 57% of GDP.
The Budget and Appropriations Committee of the National Assembly noted that the cost of debt financing is now more than the cost of financing development projects. The International Monetary Fund has since reviewed Kenya's debt distress to high from moderate, resulting from the coronavirus pandemic. The committee called on the government to abandon expensive commercial loans that will remain an expensive charge in its fiscal plan every year. The government, for now, not keen on renegotiating terms for existing commercial loans.
We are trying to push for better terms, better concessions, because what's happening is that some of the conditions attendant to debt relief are quite punitive, because it will block us from further borrowing. It will also give us a challenge already with the bonds that we have, particularly the Eurobond and the rest. So based on this, we have not yet concluded our engagement with these institutions.
The public debt must not exceed 9 trillion shillings by 2024, a cap that can still be reviewed through Parliament. Sam Gituku, TV, Nairobi.